Have you ever wondered what's beneath the surface? One of my favorite jobs was being a kitchen cabinet designer, and one of the favorite pieces about that was being able to go into people's homes and to see if where they wanted the cabinets installed would be a good fit for what they wanted, and to figure out the footprint of their design. But one of the most fascinating things was before we could install the new cabinets, we had to see what was beneath the surface. This is Barry with FatherSeekers, and this is the podcast, Teach Me Father. One of my favorite mentors in all my life told me, Dr. Charles Cookman said, what you see happening is not what's really going on. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. What's beneath the surface. When I was a designer for a major chain, once the job was sold, I would have to go and do a home inspection to measure and confirm measurements and then submit those to the fabrication company. And one of the last things that we did before installing this would mean that all of the cabinets were torn out. The old ones were torn out. The plumbing was capped off. The kitchen was shut down. It was out of order for 6 or 8 weeks. So imagine a home being without a kitchen for 6 or 8 weeks. And many times these homes were homes where children dwelled as well. But nonetheless, you're in this process. You're in this tearing out and redesigning a kitchen and replacing the old with the new. New appliances, new fixtures, new cabinets, new backsplash. And more times than not, when we got to the installation piece, we found that beneath the surface was incredibly horrible damage that stopped the job in its tracks. I remember one of those jobs that this was an older home, a very well-built home, great kitchen, great place. And when you walked into the room, it was amazing. It was a beautiful room, beautiful kitchen, very high-end cabinets back in the day when they were built and installed. Matter of fact, they were built by hand in the kitchen and then installed on site. It was amazing craftsmanship. But one of the things that we found just after tear out and checking the structure where the new cabinets would go, one of those times this in this beautiful kitchen, and you couldn't tell from the surface, looking at the surface, only until the surface was peeled back and only until the old cabinets were taken out. We could not see the damage that was there. And that damage was water damage and rot, where there had been a leak, not only in one of the water lines, a pinhole leak, very small, just a drip. It had been dripping for years. And the wood soaked up the water, so much so that in certain spots of the floor, you could take your foot or a hammer and bang and push and break right through the subflooring. And once we pulled the subfloor back, we found that the joists were rotted as well. So we had to cut out beyond the damaged and rotted margins of that water damage. And we had to replace all of the rotted or damaged wood subflooring, joist, even studs and bottom plates in the wall where the water had leaked. And no one could tell that this damage was ongoing, that it literally took years, because there was no leak in the ceiling below, and there was no way to see or find any damage. Nobody knew it until it was first uncovered. And that's what I want to talk to you about finding the things that are below the surface that need not only to be taken out and to cut back within clean margins, beyond clean margins, but to how to restore back to the original design. You see, there are no shortcuts when we repair things. There are no shortcuts when we have to remove damage and corroded materials that are in our heart, in our lives. And much of the time, we don't know that they're there until we realize, or until we have to peel the surface back, and then you really get to see the damage. But in this repair, in this cutting away, in this ripping out and replacing and restoring back to original design, there are no shortcuts. There are timelines that we have to live by, and this becomes a huge interruption and inconvenience. And that's one of the reasons that I truly believe that many of us pause or cover up things that we know that need to be restored back to original design, the corrupted, corroded, broken, damaged parts of us that need to just be taken out and removed. And there's a way to do that, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. But it's inconvenient to work on yourself. It's inconvenient to find these things that must be removed. It's inconvenient to pull back the surface, because when you remodel, when you tear away, when you install new, one of the things that you find out is that not only is it expensive, but if there's a little damage in one spot, it's always connected to another, and then that has to be repaired too. That's one of the rules of remodeling, is when you address one issue, there's always one or two attached to it. So there's this inconvenience, this expense, this time, when we know something is under the surface that must be addressed. See, some people just want to renovate. They want to just repair and improve. Some people want to refurbish. They want to make it clean, shine it up, put a new coat of paint on it. Some people want to remodel. They want to tear it out altogether, reform, reshape everything. And that doesn't work. But when we are talking about restoring back to original design, back to normal conditions, back to original construction, original creation level, then what we have to do and what we have to understand is that it is costly, it is expensive, it is inconvenient, but it is worth the time, because over time, parts of our lives that need restoration and need repair will only cause greater damage in the future if left undone. One of my most popular memories that it's almost like yesterday. I remember the story is about a friend of mine that when I was in college, I worked on a construction crew, and his name was Buck, and he was from Maine. And he had this tremendous accent. Like there was no doubt when you met Buck that you knew without any shadow of a doubt he was from Maine. He had the accent. He was just a Maine guy, but he was an older fella in his 60s, but he was a master carpenter. Like, he knew so much about carpentry that my impression of him was, oh, if I could only be a fifth of what he is, how the knowledge that he had, the tools that he had in his truck, and all of them were old because he had kept them and used them and kept them in good shape, and he used them over the years. He was just a great carpenter. He could build anything from concrete forms to installing the very finest trim work that you had ever seen in your life. I don't even have words for it. He was just so good. And I've never met anybody like him since, but I began to watch him and I began to see characteristics in his life and elements of why he was so good. He was very specific, very particular. He was very disciplined and ordered. And what that did for him, that created not just this rhythm, but this forward movement that didn't wobble, it didn't drift side to side or up and down. It was steady on, steady, very particular in his measurements, very specific in his communication, so disciplined and so ordered in his work that it was almost perfect. Like he would not leave something undone. And one of the other things I noticed about him, that he was a man of integrity and character, impeccable character, because he wouldn't take shortcuts. There was an art to his work. He was impeccably perfect as a trim carpenter could be. You don't become a master carpenter by cutting corners. Now, I'm talking about us having things underneath the surface of our lives that people don't see, that they don't even think about. But there are some things in our hearts, in our minds, that will show up on the outside of our lives, that will be seen and heard in our actions and our words. Some of us are really good at covering those things up. Some of us have the ability, the innate ability to hide those things and what's required. And let me insert this too. Many of us have for so long covered knowing that something there needs removal, yet we pause and try to hide even more and cover it up. And the danger is ever increasing day by day because the damage is continuing. The damage is growing deeper, wider, and it is rotting us to the core. And eventually the floor will fall in underneath us and all will be seen. So when we know that there are things that must be addressed, we have to be steadfast about those and do that. Now, there are some things that we're not aware under the surface that we will only find out once they erupt into chaos. Some of those things are hidden identities, hidden sins, hidden secrets from people that we don't want them to know, and we think that we can cover those up. But I will tell you, my dear friend, there's always a great cost attached to the things that are under the surface that require restoration back to original design. There's only one way to do that. Like there's only one way to correct damaged parts of our heart, our mind, our lives, our emotions. There's only one way to address that and to be back to original design. And you may not be a guy who believes in God. You may not be a guy who has come to that place in his life where you know that you've not been able to do it on your own. Your vices have not satisfied. Parts of your life are falling apart because the things that are broken inside you are now beginning to shift and to cause structural damage in your life, your emotions, your mind, will, even the way that you treat yourself, your family, your friends, your work, peers. Things will begin to unravel. Things will begin to collapse. And some of you who are listening right now, if you're like me, you know that you may not know what it is, but you know that there's something there, and you know that it must be addressed. You know that something has to take place to make the necessary restoration. You know that something has to be addressed. The danger is knowing and not doing. Now, there's only one way to do this, and that one way is to recognize that those broken parts of us, the mind, the will, the heart, those broken parts of us can only be healed, as I understand and know it for sure without any doubt, by God himself. And he not only has the ability to heal and to remove damage and to restore back to the way that we were created and meant to live, but he also knows exactly how to remove and to how far removal needs to be done, how far back into clean margins need to be cut away. And some things just need to be removed from our lives. One of my favorite verses is Hebrews chapter 4, 12 and 13. And it says this, that God's word, it's a living word. It's active, sharper, like a two-edged sword, like piercing to the very deepest part of our heart, our soul, our mind, piercing to divide the good from the broken, piercing to the point of our thoughts, our intentions, of our heart, down to the very rooted, rotted piece in us that needs to be removed. The beauty is that no one of us can hide from God, and none of these broken pieces in our lives can be hidden because he knows. The passage says that we're naked before his eyes. And eventually one day we will all give an account. Now, you may not believe that, but I want to encourage you to examine and interrogate that idea, because I will tell you now that one day we will all stand before God and we will give an account for our lives, because he created us. And here's what I want you to know. Here's what I want you to walk away with, is that I don't know your story. I don't know the details. I do know that we have similarities. And I do know that if you grew up without a father, you have lots of fear and doubt about God, about him being a father and what kind of father is he actually. I want to ensure and reassure you that he's a good father, not like maybe the guy that you grew up with, like me. But here are the things that I want to tell you now. These foreign, corrosive, corroded things in our hearts and life beneath the surface have to be removed. Not only do they have to be removed, but they have to be removed, taken out, and disposed of permanently. You may have a horrible habit that's a vice in your life. God can help you with that. That might be the thing underneath the surface that must be identified. Now, I will tell you that it requires bravery. You have to be brave to do this. You have to have courage, because when you begin to remove and expose damage, you're exposed to your family. You're exposed to the people who are helping you repair. You're exposed to the process of removing the damage beneath the surface. Listen, I want to encourage you to think about this and to begin to inventory your heart and see what needs to be removed, not by your own standards. Consider God's standards. And if you're a Jesus guy, you really need to lean into this, because the church word, the theological word for this is called sanctification. When there are things in our lives that must be removed when we walk with the Lord, that's called sanctification, drawing closer, removing more, becoming more like Jesus. Hey, this is the podcast, Teach Me to Father, and I want to push you in a direction that'll give you some more help, and that is a supplement to our podcast called Father Fuel. If you'll go to the website and go to the Father Fuel tab, you can give us your email, and we will send you an email weekly with encouragement and wisdom and some tools to equip yourself. We're not going to bug you for time or money. We're not going to try to sell you anything. We want to get information into your hands to help you become a better dad. And by the way, we feel like I know That Father Fuel will give you encouragement. It will give you equipping resources. It will give you empowerment ideas and concepts. And it is a tool to strengthen your fatherhood wisdom quotient. This is Barry with FatherSeekers, and this is the podcast, Teach Me to Father.